The bell above the old diner door gave a soft, metallic chime. No one looked up at first. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the room. Bacon sizzled on a cast-iron grill behind the counter. Forks scraped against porcelain plates. A tired truck driver laughed at something his friend had said, while a young couple argued quietly over the morning newspaper. It looked like every other morning, ordinary, forgettable, until the door slowly opened. A cool autumn breeze slipped inside before he did. Then he stepped through. A black wool coat rested neatly across his shoulders. His polished shoes reflected the warm light hanging from the ceiling. Dark sunglasses covered his eyes, though everyone in the room recognized him before he even took them off. The conversations stopped one after another. Forks froze halfway to waiting mouths. Coffee cups remained suspended in trembling hands. Even the old jukebox, which had been quietly humming in the corner, seemed insignificant compared to the silence that suddenly filled the diner. There was only one reason an entire room could fall silent like that. Elvis Presley had just walked in. Not the Elvis people watched from concert seats hundreds of feet away. Not the Elvis smiling from magazine covers. Not the larger-than-life superstar whose voice echoed through stadiums. Just a man looking for breakfast. He slowly removed his sunglasses. A warm smile crossed his face. "Mornin'." It was simple, friendly, almost ordinary. Several customers nervously greeted him back. An elderly woman nearly fainted. A little boy tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad!" His father whispered back without taking his eyes off Elvis. "I know, son. I know." Near the kitchen entrance stood a young waitress. Her name was Emily Carter. She was barely in her early 20s. To everyone else inside the diner, she was simply another hard-working waitress trying to survive another exhausting shift. But inside her heart, this moment felt impossible, because she had dreamed about it for nearly her entire life. When she was only a little girl, her father used to save money for months just to buy one Elvis record. Every Sunday evening they would place the record onto an old turntable. The house wasn't large. The furniture wasn't expensive. Sometimes they barely had enough food. But when Elvis began singing, their little home somehow felt richer than any mansion. Emily's father would dance around the living room, pretending he was standing beside Elvis on stage. He always laughed. He always smiled. He always told her the same thing. "Real greatness isn't measured by applause, sweetheart." He would gently tap her forehead. "It's measured by how people feel after you've left the room." She never forgot those words. Then everything changed. Her father became sick. The medical bills swallowed every dollar the family had. Eventually, the music stopped. The turntable gathered dust. Her father was gone before Emily celebrated her 19th birthday. Life became something entirely different. Dreams became bills. Songs became long work shifts. Hope became something she only remembered before falling asleep. Yet every single morning before opening the diner, Emily quietly whispered one sentence to herself. "Maybe today something wonderful will happen." She never truly believed it. Not anymore. Until today. Because the man whose voice had carried her family through their darkest nights was now standing only a few feet away. Her hands immediately began shaking, not slightly, violently. She turned toward the kitchen. "Emily?" The cook raised an eyebrow. "You all right?" She forced a smile.
I'm fine.
She wasn't. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if everyone else could hear it. The manager noticed. His name was Richard Collins, a tall man with sharp eyes and very little patience. He cared about one thing: money, customers, perfect service. Nothing else. He looked directly at Emily. "Table 7. His voice sounded cold. "That's yours." Emily slowly nodded. Every step toward Elvis felt unreal. The room watched her. She picked up a fresh coffee pot. A clean porcelain cup rested carefully on her serving tray.
Take a deep breath, she whispered to herself. You've served hundreds of customers. But none of them had ever been Elvis Presley. She reached the table. Elvis looked up. His smile wasn't the polished smile people saw on television. It was softer, kinder, like someone greeting an old friend. "Good morning." Emily forgot how to breathe. Good morning." Her voice almost disappeared. Elvis noticed. "You seem nervous." She laughed awkwardly. "A little." He smiled. "I promise I don't bite." A few nearby customers chuckled. The tension eased for only a moment. Emily carefully placed the coffee cup onto the table. "So," Elvis asked gently, "busy morning?" She nodded. "Every morning." "You've been working here long?" "Almost 3 years." "That's impressive." Nobody famous had ever asked her such ordinary questions. Yet somehow, those simple words meant more than any autograph ever could. She reached for the coffee pot. "May I?" Elvis nodded. "Please." The coffee slowly poured into the white porcelain cup. Perfect. Not a single drop spilled. Emily silently thanked heaven. Maybe she could actually survive this. Then Elvis looked directly into her eyes. Not as a celebrity, not as an icon. Simply as another human being. "You know," he said warmly, "you have one of the kindest smiles I've seen all morning." Everything stopped. Her father's words echoed inside her mind. Real greatness isn't measured by applause. Her vision blurred. For one tiny heartbeat, she wasn't standing inside a diner anymore. She was 8 years old again, dancing barefoot across the living room while her father laughed louder than the music. The memory hit her like a wave. Her fingers loosened, just enough. The heavy serving tray slipped. Time slowed. The porcelain cup tilted. The coffee pot rolled. Someone gasped. "No," Emily whispered. The tray struck the edge of the table. Then, crash! Porcelain exploded across the wooden floor. Glass shattered in every direction. Hot coffee splashed across Elvis's black coat. The sound echoed through the silent diner like a gunshot. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Emily stared at the broken pieces scattered around her feet. Her entire body froze. Her hands covered her mouth. "No," she whispered again, tears already filling her eyes. I'm so sorry." The silence that followed felt heavier than the crash itself. Across the room, manager Richard Collins slowly turned around. His expression darkened, and the look in his eyes promised that this morning was only beginning. The entire diner remained frozen. No one bent down to pick up the shattered porcelain. No one spoke. The only sound left in the room was the slow drip of coffee falling from the edge of the table onto the worn wooden floor. Drip. Drip. Drip.
Emily couldn't breathe. She stared at the broken pieces lying around her shoes, as if they were the remains of everything she had spent the last 3 years trying to build. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Tears blurred her vision. I'm so sorry." The words barely escaped her lips. She wanted to kneel down. She wanted to clean everything before anyone could say a word. She wanted to disappear. Instead, a sharp voice sliced through the silence. "Emily!" Manager Richard Collins stormed across the diner. His polished shoes struck the wooden floor with heavy, angry footsteps. Every customer instinctively moved aside. People had seen him angry before, but never like this. His face had turned bright red. His jaw was clenched so tightly that the veins along his neck stood out. He looked at the broken dishes, then at the coffee soaking into Elvis's expensive black coat, then back at Emily. "You finally done it." Emily lowered her head. "Sir, it was an accident." "An accident?" His voice echoed across the diner. "You call ruining the most important customer's morning an accident?" She tried again. I'll pay for everything." He laughed, a cold laugh. "With what money?" The room became even quieter. Emily felt every pair of eyes on her. Richard stepped closer. "So this is what happens every time you get emotional." She shook her head. "No." "You drop plates." "No." "You waste food." "I'm sorry." "You embarrass this diner." She could no longer stop crying. "I'll work extra shifts." "No." "I'll clean after everyone leaves." "No." "I'll do anything." Richard pointed toward the front door. "You don't work here anymore." Emily looked up. The words didn't make sense. "What?" "I said," he spoke slowly, making sure everyone could hear, "you're fired." Someone at the back of the diner quietly whispered, "Oh no." Emily's knees almost gave out. 3 years. 3 years of waking before sunrise. 3 years of standing until her feet ached. 3 years of smiling through exhaustion. Gone, in a single sentence. She looked around the diner. Surely someone would say something. One customer, one cook, one regular, anyone. But nobody moved. Some looked away. Others stared into their coffee. Fear is contagious. No one wanted to become the manager's next target. Richard folded his arms. "Pick up your things." Emily wiped her tears. "Please. My mother depends on this job. My rent is due next week. I have nowhere else to go." Richard's expression never changed. "That isn't my problem." Those words hit harder than the crash itself. Emily slowly knelt on the floor. She began collecting the broken porcelain with shaking fingers. A sharp edge sliced across her hand. Blood appeared almost immediately. She didn't even notice. Her tears hurt more. Across the table, Elvis had not spoken once. He simply watched. Not the broken dishes, not the ruined coat. Emily. He noticed the way she apologized before anyone demanded it, the way she blamed herself, the way she tried to protect everyone else's morning while hers was falling apart. He had seen something similar before, years earlier, long before the fame, long before sold-out concerts. Back when he was just another young man walking into recording studios, hoping someone would give him a chance. He remembered every rejection, every door that closed, every person who looked at him and decided he wasn't worth believing in. He quietly stood. The chair slid backward, Every head turned. Richard noticed him immediately. "Oh, Mr. Presley." His tone changed instantly. "I deeply apologize. We'll have another waitress serve you." Elvis calmly removed the coffee-soaked coat from his shoulders. He folded it over one arm. "It's only coffee." Richard forced an awkward smile. "We'll have it professionally cleaned." Elvis looked at him. "I'm not talking about the coat." Silence. He slowly walked toward Emily. She was still kneeling on the floor, trying to gather the broken pieces with her injured hand. Without saying a word, Elvis bent down. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he picked up one of the broken porcelain pieces himself. Gasps spread across the diner. A famous man worth millions, picking up broken dishes from the floor. Richard rushed forward. "No, sir. Please don't." Elvis continued gathering the pieces. Another, then another. "It isn't beneath me," he said quietly. Richard stood speechless. Emily looked up. "Please. You don't have to." Elvis smiled gently. "I know. But I want to." Within moments, several customers looked at each other. An elderly man slowly stood. "I suppose one more pair of hands won't hurt." He picked up another piece. A young mother joined him, then the truck driver, then 2 college students. Then the cook walked out from behind the counter. Within less than a minute, nearly everyone in the diner was helping. Only one person remained standing with folded arms. Richard. He watched the entire room transform before his eyes. The same customers who had remained silent only moments earlier were now kneeling together, helping a waitress they barely knew. Not because they were told to, because someone had reminded them what kindness looked like. Emily couldn't stop crying. Not from embarrassment anymore. From disbelief. When the last broken piece had been collected, Elvis reached into his pocket. He pulled out a clean white handkerchief. Without asking, he gently wrapped it around the small cut on Emily's hand. She looked at him with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry about your coat," he smiled. "It can be washed." She looked down. "I lost everything." Elvis quietly shook his head. "No." "You lost a job." "Those aren't always the same thing." Richard scoffed. "A job is exactly what she lost." Elvis slowly turned toward him. For the first time, his expression became serious. "Tell me something." Richard straightened his tie. "Of course. If your own daughter had made this mistake." The manager hesitated. Would you throw her out in front of an entire room full of strangers?" Richard had no answer. Elvis took one step closer. "Leadership isn't measured by how loudly you correct mistakes." Another step. "It's measured by how wisely you respond to them." The diner had become so quiet that the ticking clock above the counter sounded deafening. Richard tried to recover. "Business requires discipline." Elvis nodded. "It does. But discipline, without compassion, eventually destroys the very people who built the business." No one dared interrupt. Richard finally forced a laugh. "If you feel so sorry for her," he spread his hands dramatically, "take her with you." Several customers laughed nervously. Richard smirked. "Maybe you can even give her a better life." He expected everyone else to laugh with him. Instead, no one did. Elvis looked at Emily. She stood silently, clutching the blood-stained handkerchief. Mascara ran down her cheeks. Her shoulders shook with every breath. She looked completely defeated. He recognized that look. It was the look people wear when life convinces them they no longer matter. Elvis slowly extended his hand. Not dramatically, not for attention. Simply one human being reaching toward another. Miss Emily. His voice was calm. Look at me. She slowly raised her eyes. I want you to remember something for the rest of your life. She swallowed hard. A single bad morning, he said, does not decide the rest of your story. She stared at him. The entire diner waited. Then he spoke the words no one in that room would ever forget. I don't believe you dropped those dishes because you were careless. I believe you dropped them because your heart was full. Emily broke down completely. He kept his hand extended. Come with me. She blinked. What? I have people around me who organize charity events all across the country. They don't need perfection. They need kindness. You already have that. Richard laughed loudly. You can't be serious. Elvis looked back at him. I've never been more serious. Then he turned once more toward Emily. Will you trust me? She looked at the hand stretched toward her. The same hand that moments earlier had been helping her gather broken pieces from the floor. Her father's words echoed inside her heart. Real greatness isn't measured by applause. With trembling fingers, Emily slowly reached forward. Their hands met. The room erupted into applause, not because a celebrity had done something extraordinary, but because, for the first time that morning, hope had walked back into the diner. Neither Emily nor anyone standing in that room could possibly imagine that this simple handshake would become the first page of a story that would one day inspire millions. 1 week later, Emily stood in front of a building she had never imagined she would enter. Her hands were shaking again, not because she was afraid of dropping another tray, because this time she was terrified of disappointing the man who had believed in her when no one else had. She looked up at the elegant brick building. Inside, dozens of people hurried through wide hallways carrying folders, schedules, and stacks of letters. This was where Elvis's charitable foundation planned concerts, community events, hospital visits, and fundraising programs across the country. Emily took one deep breath. A receptionist smiled. You must be Miss Carter. Emily nodded. I think I'm in the right place. The woman smiled warmly. Mr. Presley has been expecting you. A few moments later, Elvis walked into the room wearing a simple dark suit. There were no cameras, no screaming fans, no photographers. Only the same warm smile she remembered from the diner. I'm glad you came. Emily lowered her eyes. I almost didn't. Why? I thought maybe you only said those things because you felt sorry for me. Elvis gently shook his head. Never confuse kindness with pity. He walked toward the window. You know why I asked you to come here? Emily remained silent. Because when everything around you fell apart, your first instinct wasn't to defend yourself. It was to apologize. You cared about everyone else's mourning while your own life was collapsing. He turned back toward her. You can't teach that. You either have a heart for people or you don't. Emily felt tears returning to her eyes. I've never managed anything. I've never organized events. I've never spoken in front of important people. Elvis smiled. Neither had I, before someone gave me my first chance. He handed her a folder. Everyone starts somewhere. That day changed everything. At first, Emily answered phone calls. She organized paperwork. She greeted volunteers. She wrote thank you letters to families. She stayed after everyone else had gone home, not because anyone asked her to, because she wanted to earn the opportunity she had been given. People noticed. Within months, she became the person everyone trusted. If volunteers were discouraged, Emily encouraged them. If families needed help, Emily found a way. If an event seemed impossible, Emily somehow made it happen. One evening after a charity concert, Elvis found her sitting alone in an empty auditorium. Thousands of chairs surrounded them. The stage lights had already been switched off. Emily was staring at a notebook. "What are you writing?" She hesitated. "I have an idea." Elvis sat beside her. "What kind of idea?" She smiled nervously. "I want to create a company one day." "A company?" She nodded. "One that hires young women nobody believes in. Single mothers. Girls who lost their jobs. People everyone else overlooks." Elvis listened quietly. "I don't want them to wait for someone to rescue them. I want to give them the opportunity to rescue themselves." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Elvis smiled. "That's the best business plan I've heard all year." Years passed. The world continued changing. Emily never forgot where she had started. She attended business classes at night. She studied finance, leadership, communication, negotiation. She made mistakes. She lost money. She failed more than once. More than once, she thought about giving up. Whenever those thoughts appeared, she opened a small wooden box. Inside rested one tiny piece of broken white porcelain, the only piece she had kept from the tray that shattered in the diner. She would hold it in her hand, close her eyes, and remember the morning everyone believed her life had ended. Little by little, her company grew. 10 employees became 50. 50 became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. Her offices expanded into city after city. The company became known for giving opportunities to people who had been rejected everywhere else. Investors admired her. Business leaders respected her. Employees loved her. Not because she demanded loyalty, because she gave it first. Many years later, a national television network invited Emily Carter for an exclusive interview. The studio lights were bright. The audience applauded as she walked onto the stage. By then, she had become one of the most respected entrepreneurs in America. Magazines called her one of the country's most influential businesswomen. The interviewer smiled. "Miss Carter, people know your success. They know your company. They know your philanthropy. But there is one question everyone wants answered." Emily smiled softly. "When did your success really begin?" The audience leaned forward. Many expected her to mention a major investment, or a brilliant business decision, or the opening of her first office. Instead, Emily slowly reached into her handbag. She removed a tiny cloth pouch. Carefully, she opened it. Resting in her palm was a small, broken piece of white porcelain. The audience looked confused. Emily smiled through tears. "My success began the day this plate broke." The studio became completely silent. She continued. Everyone thought they were watching the worst day of my life. They weren't. They were watching the first day of my new life.
She looked at the porcelain.
I thought I had lost everything.
But I had only lost a job. I had not lost my value. The interviewer asked quietly, "Who taught you that?" Emily looked toward the camera. There was gratitude in her eyes. One man. A man the whole world knew as a legend. But I remember him for something entirely different. He saw hope in a frightened waitress when no one else did. She smiled. His name was Elvis Presley. Millions of viewers watched in silence. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others looked at the people sitting beside them. Across the country, in a small roadside diner that had changed very little over the years, an old television sat above the counter. The same wooden floor, the same faded walls, the same front door. Only time had changed. Richard Collins stood behind the counter. His hair had turned grey. The confidence that once filled his voice had disappeared. When Emily's interview appeared on the screen, he stopped working. He listened to every word. Not once did he look away. When the interviewer thanked Emily, the broadcast ended. The diner became quiet. Richard slowly lowered his head. He looked toward the corner where Emily had once knelt, crying as she gathered shattered porcelain with trembling hands. For the first time in many years, he understood what he had truly lost. It had never been an employee. It had never been a waitress. It had been an opportunity to change someone's life with compassion instead of humiliation. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. I thought I fired an unlucky waitress. He closed his eyes. But I walked away from the future. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the old diner windows exactly as it had all those years before. Somewhere in another city, Emily was opening a new training center for young women searching for their first chance. Above the entrance, a simple bronze plaque carried a single sentence. One act of kindness can become someone else's entire future. Before the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Emily quietly placed the tiny piece of broken porcelain inside a glass display near the entrance. A young employee looked at it curiously. It's broken. Emily smiled. No. She gently touched the glass. It's proof that broken moments can build beautiful lives. The crowd applauded as the doors opened. Young women stepped inside, carrying dreams they were afraid to speak aloud. Emily watched them with tears of gratitude, because many years earlier, someone had done exactly the same for her. And somewhere beyond the applause, beyond the cameras, beyond the passing years, the memory of one quiet morning in a little roadside diner continued changing lives. Not because a famous singer had walked through the door, but because, in a room where everyone noticed a mistake, one man chose to notice a person.